Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Now, this episode, we are going to be doing something special, because if you don't notice, it is Pride Month. And as something special, it won't just be the main series video that will be Pride related. This year, every single podcast to be released this month is going to be Pride related. I know some of you are going to be mad. And to you all I say, go fuck yourselves. The unsub button is right there. You can go. But anyways, before we get into any of that, let's get right into the news. First, here's an update on one of the foreign elections that we've talked about already. It's not the one you think it is. This video is being recorded on the 1st of June, which is before the certain other election that is going to be coming up soon. This one is an update on the South African election. And as basically every pundit has fully agreed, as every pundit has fully understood now, the African National Congress no longer has a majority, at least in votes. Because, right now, according to this, with 96% of the votes in, the ANC only has around 40.35% of the vote. It is still decently larger margin than the second place finisher, the Democratic Alliance, but it is still noticeable that the ANC does not have a majority anymore. What I do find interesting is the fact that the MK party, the one that's run by Zuma, they're the ones who got third, not the Economic Freedom Fighters. And it's very weird. It's very weird that they're it's kind of weird, because, really, it seems like Zuma is kind of overtaking the spot that some people were trying to give Malema, because, Zuma is I literally just did a quick glance again at his page, and it turns out, more issues were added in the time that I covered when I covered the podcast, from when I covered it in a previous podcast, and now, or at the very least, when it was coming up, because it turns out the MK party is way worse than I thought it was, because Zuma, one of the big things he campaigned on was he wanted to repeal the same-sex marriage laws in the country. It seems that MK essentially became a softer version of the Economic Freedom Fighters. On paper, they claim to be left-wing populist, and then on another end, they also claim some sort of demagogic attitude towards their leader. Really, they seem to be in the right place at the right time, I guess. But again, it looks like the ANC lost their majority. What are they going to do? Are they going to align with the MK party and the EFF? Because that's one of the things that the Democratic Alliance kept trying to be fear-mongering about. We'll have to wait and see on how the actual seat distribution plays out. The next story is a development from the United Kingdom, because the UK has been having some really, really weird things that has been going on lately. And yes, they do revolve around the Labour Party, and yes, they revolve around a very controversial aspect of the Labour Party. I know a lot of us have been focusing on the issues regarding Jeremy Corbyn, but there is another member of the Labour Party that has been facing similar issues. That is Dianne Abbott, the first black woman elected to Parliament and longest-serving black MP in the UK. And she has been very close to Jeremy Corbyn, one of the closest allies to Jeremy Corbyn within the Labour Party. She endorsed his bid to be leader. When she ran for leader in the previous cycle, 2010, he endorsed her. A lot of stuff like that. And she's also gotten into a little bit of issue because she's made some statements that have been a bit controversial, including one that happened, where in 2017, they basically, re-litigated old statements she made in support of the IRA. And, as happened in that time period, she was also very heavily involved in the situation regarding the Labour anti-Semitism controversy. Now, I remember she took a stance that was a bit more controversial, because she actually took some of the allegations about anti-Semitism with the Labour Party very seriously, which is fair. Corbyn also took some of the accusations seriously. He was let's look into it. Remember, they started the investigation to begin with, even giving some criticism towards Corbyn's leadership. But here's what ended up happening. In April of 2023, Dianne Abbott wrote a letter, and it was released to the Observer, and it talked about racism. And she mentioned how racism that was experienced by Jewish, Irish, and traveler people was not the same as the experiences of black people. Travelers are an ethno-cultural group from Ireland that are they're an indigenous group that is like from Ireland. But anyways, she made the claim that issues that they faced were not the same as racism towards black people. And if you know anything about any of these groups, you understand why what she said isn't really that controversial. Those three groups that I listed that she said the racism that they face isn't the same as the racism that I face. Those three groups are white. Skin tone wise, they are white. Yes, that is what they are. She didn't say that the things that they faced weren't bad. We of course understand that all of these groups have faced persecution in different levels, but she's simply stating that the experiences that she feels is different than the experiences that they would feel. And this isn't a controversial statement either. I've heard Jewish people literally explain that that is what happens. They'll go to people, they'll be super nice, they'll be happy, and they'll have a fun time, and then they'll mention, yeah, I'm Jewish, and then all of a sudden it completely changes. Dianne Abbott can't just go, oh yeah, I'm not black. She can't do that. She's black, she's noticeably black. She's going to face persecution immediately just by looking at her. And when that happened, she was immediately kicked out of the Labour Party due to the fact that they perceived her statement as being anti-Semitic. Even though she didn't say that, oh, Jews don't face any persecution at all. She didn't say that. She said that the racism that is experienced by Jewish people and Irish people and travelers is different than the ones that she faces. Again, not saying that they don't face it at all. She's just saying that they experience it in a different way. And that's led into a little bit of an issue because, as we all know, there's an election that is coming up. And basically everyone's trying to figure out, what's happening? Is Abbott going to be able to come back or not? Is she facing the same fate as Corbyn, or is she possibly coming back? And what ended up happening was that Keir Starmer said, oh, we'll discuss this issue later when the results of the investigation that we put into her came out. Because they initiated an investigation against her to look over to see, is she anti-Semitic or not? But then a Labour Party person squealed and said, wait, what are you talking about, Keir? What are you talking about? The investigation to her was finished in 2023. The investigation is not going on. We already reached the conclusion, and we found that she's not anti-Semitic, so there's no issue. And then due to that coming out, immediately it's oh, okay, she's allowed to come back to the Labour Party. But then there was also a little controversy where she says, okay, but I'm allowed to come back, but she didn't believe that she also had the ability to run as a Labour MP. But Keir Starmer saying, no, you're free to run as a Labour MP. Which is this is a bit interesting, this is a bit odd, because doesn't this sound like he was just trying to wait it out? To me, it literally seems like he was just trying to wait it out to see if Abbott would just go solo or not. He probably would have released the results of the investigation after the deadline passed. So it's I guess you can't run as a Labour MP. Oops. Just another spit in the face to the left wing of Labour. But what do you expect? Keir Starmer's just doing that. Alright, so now let's move on to some actual possible good news. Biden has unveiled a proposal to end the Gaza war. Interesting. Let's read over it. The 3-part proposal would begin with a 6-week ceasefire in which the Israeli Defense Force would withdraw from populated areas of Gaza. There would also be a surge of humanitarian aid, as well as an exchange of some hostages for Palestinian prisoners. The deal would eventually lead to a permanent cessation of hostilities and a major reconstruction plan for Gaza. Quite literally, Biden is literally just openly calling for a ceasefire right now. Quite literally. There are a lot of leftists who seem to be really surprised at this, and it's I don't know why you're surprised at this. Biden wants the war to end, because he wants the war to end. He doesn't want to be a president during a war. Nobody wants to be a president during a war. nobody really wants to be a president in a war, especially if the war is unpopular. And there are also some leftists who are trying to figure out, like, all right, what's the catch? What's the catch? What's the thing that's going to happen? It's like, I mean, there doesn't seem to be anything. Like, literally, it's literally just Biden just being like, yeah, we can do a temporary pause to the fighting, exchange the hostages, and then we propose a permanent ending of the violence while rebuilding the things that we caused. Like, I mean, literally, this just seems like a really good idea. Like, I mean, I don't know how it would extend to, like, a further plan, because I don't know how it would, but, like, it would, at the very least, lead to a end of the violence for the time being, and then possibly the nations could get together and figure out a permanent, like, a more and more permanent solution, or at the very least, like, something that will, like, officially, like, make it so that their governments would be able to work properly, like, especially the Palestinian side, like, they would finally be able to, like, function as an actual government and maybe actually hold elections or anything good. This is a good thing. And apparently Hamas has said that they viewed the proposal of this in a positive manner, positively. I mean, ignoring the fact that a lot of Western leaders still keep trying to be like, man, Hamas, you really gotta accept this deal, man. You really gotta accept this deal. You really gotta accept this deal. It's like, but they already said they agreed to this idea. Don't you remember that Hamas literally like accepted a ceasefire deal previously? This all seems like a really good idea. Too bad I have absolutely zero faith in Israel actually doing this deal. I mean, there are a lot of, like, fucking, like, Israeli-backed politicians that are literally just like, no, we don't like this deal. It's like, of course you don't fucking like this deal, because it doesn't involve, like, 1 million Palestinians dying. Look, and that's the sad truth. It's just like, yeah, I think this is a great idea. Everybody else seems to think this is a great idea. Too bad Israel just doesn't, because they don't care, and they just want to kill the Palestinians. I have absolutely zero faith in Netanyahu and the current government of Israel to even remotely accept this deal. Because they don't give a shit about the hostages. They don't give a shit about ending the war. They want to keep this war going so they can stay in power forever. Because they want to ride the nationalism wave. They also just want to kill the Palestinians. I could go on a huge rant, but I'll just move on to the next story. I was, like this. I'll just say the news story, whatever. Trump guilty on all 34 counts in the hush money trial, historic first for a former U.S. president. New York jury on Thursday found that former President Donald Trump is guilty on all 34 felony charges of falsifying business records related to a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels by his then personal lawyer Michael Cohen before the 2016 election. Trump, 77, is the first U.S. president to be convicted of any crime. He faces 3 other pending criminal cases. I mean, I would be enthusiastic, but the fact of the matter is, like, I don't think... Like, just, there's a lot of things about it that I just, like, I mean, I'd love to be like, yes, I'm so excited and ecstatic for this. But we're just seeing, like, the same old shit. It's just, like, we're seeing Dems happy about this because the criminal gets charged. The criminal that they don't like gets charged. Republicans are fucking crying and pissing themselves because they really want Trump to just be able to do all the crimes he wants without facing any punishment because they're in a cult, to the point where his party literally is, like, touting, like, his thing is, like, a money raising. Like, yes, we love money. I don't think this is going to have much of a say in the election. And I know this as proof because YouGov poll has stated that of the people who were paying attention and actually, like, submitted results for a YouGov poll, 3% of adults said that they weren't planning on voting for Trump, but then after the conviction, they were going to vote for Trump. And 5% of adults said that they were going to vote for Donald Trump, but after the conviction, they weren't going to vote for Donald Trump. Really doesn't like that doesn't seem like a negligible amount of, like, votes, really. One thing this did lead to is that Tulsi Gabbard officially endorsed Donald Trump. Like, I mean, she didn't make a formal statement, but, like, she just casually just dropped on Fox News. Like, she was just like, oh, every good American needs to support. Yeah, like, she literally just told Americans, like, they need to vote for Donald Trump. It's just like, fuck that cunt. I don't give a fuck. Hope the shekels and rubles were worth it, Tulsi. And I would be so ecstatic if this actually meant anything. If this actually meant Trump would go to jail or something. But he's not going to go to jail. That's the thing. All these cases are meaningless because he's not going to get punished. He won't get punished until either he loses, which I hope he will, or after his term is over, which is probably not gonna happen because he's a fucking cult leader who wants to turn the United States into a fucking dictatorship. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. Before we get into that, I just need to say this. If you, the viewer, is bisexual, you are valid and deserve love and respect. Bisexuality was defined as the romantic and sexual attraction to both men and women. Now, the definition's a little more complicated, with more people coming to terms with our gender binary being outdated. We'll touch on that in a bit, but all you need to know is that bisexuals are known to be different from the rest of the LGBTQ spectrum due to it not being black and white like heterosexuality and homosexuality, which has led to a lot of problems in how people view bisexual people. The biggest issue being faced is the idea of bisexual erasure, which is where bisexuality is, like the name suggests, erased. It can be done in a lot of ways: history alteration, media propaganda, or just literally just pretending that bisexual people or bisexuality just doesn't happen. It's mostly done by heterosexuals who know absolutely nothing about bisexuality. Mostly done by heterosexuals. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, let's just go to the parts where we get to bash on the cishetes. The biggest issue that bi people face from the evil heterosexuals is epitomized by one simple phrase: it's just a phase. Because most bi people discover their sexuality during high school or college, the times that you're allegedly supposed to experiment and learn about yourself, the assumption comes that once you're done experimenting, you will eventually settle down and pick one. Viewed in a similar way to when we view people dating, where you start out kind of like playing the field, and then eventually you're supposed to settle down with the right person. Because of the heteronormative monogamous society that we live in, based on sort of like old traditions from like older religions, since people cannot really fathom anybody being in a... I mean, it's kind of weird. We understand the idea of people being in relationships with different people at different times, but it's like, we don't seem to understand this concept. When it comes to bi people, it just doesn't hit for some reason. Where if a bi person, if a bi man holds hands with another man, they go, haha, so he doesn't like pussy, haha, he only likes men. When we know for a fact that that's just not that's not true. We understand that when it comes to literally every single other aspect, but for some reason, not when it comes to bi people. Imagine this: you're dating a partner of your racial group. Like, if you're white, you're dating a white person. If you're black, you're dating a black person. If you're Asian, you're dating an Asian person. If you're Hispanic, you're dating another Hispanic person. And, whatever. Pakistani, Iraqi, whatever. The race doesn't matter. But let's just say this. You're dating a person of your racial group. Imagine if you two dating each other, and then other people around you start saying, so those two just must really hate miscegenation because they're dating people of their racial group and they're not dating someone of a different racial group. They must think that we should segregate society or something like that. Like imagine that. Or if you're dating someone who's not of your race, someone goes, "Oh, so you want to end the bloodline?" I know these statements are stupid for different reasons, but I mean, it's just a point to get across. Like, yeah, that's not real. We understand that if you are dating a person who is not of your racial group, you are not saying, I don't want to date people of my racial group, or vice versa. Much in the same way, bi people, just because they date the person of their biological sex or of their gender, doesn't mean that they don't want to date people of a different gender. But the straights can't comprehend this, apparently. And even for, like, a lot of bi people, kind of, like expect sort of like a lean, like it's like, oh yeah, they're bi, but they like lean a certain direction, or they like whatever, which may or may not be true. But again, it's like that's just basically they're just doing an assumption. You have to know that individual person to understand their preferences and such. Just because a bi guy dates another guy doesn't automatically mean that he thinks all women are hideous, disgusting, and he won't date them. Much in the same way, if you date a black woman, it doesn't automatically mean that you think that all Asian women are fat, ugly pigs. No, that doesn't mean that at all. It's not difficult to understand. And again, like, it's just because we have this sort of viewpoint in our mentality due to the heteronormative society, where it's like, yeah, eventually you'll settle down and you'll pick the one person that you'll be with. And just because of that one person you'll be with, I guess that erases them. Because again, we also understand this again for straight people. We understand this for straight people. Just because a guy chooses to marry a woman doesn't mean that he automatically thinks every single other woman is ugly. He might still check out other women. He will probably do it significantly less, but he'll still check out women. He'll still find other women physically attractive. Much in the same way, again, if a bisexual man dates another man and gets married to a man, doesn't automatically mean oh no, the women aren't attractive anymore. Oops. This isn't difficult to understand, people. We understand this. This isn't hard, guys. Speaking of hard, guys, there is one type of bisexual person that heterosexual people are able to not erase, particularly heterosexual men. And that's, of course, bisexual women. Take a wild guess why they remember bisexual women more than they remember bisexual men. Because men want to envision themselves in control of two bisexual women who will kiss on command and do other NSFW stuff in a snap. A lot of guys are really into lesbian stuff. Like really. I know this from experience. A lot of guys are really into like the idea of having it's very ironic. A lot of men are very interested in the idea of having multiple women, and yet we still live in a society where we have a monogamous world and not a polyamorous world. That's another thing I find really weird about a lot of this like sexuality stuff that I started looking into. It's like a lot of this stuff is like you can literally just change the rules and fix these things. Like really, like a lot of these things can easily be fixed with just like a snap. Like a lot of players would complain a lot about like, oh, I can't like date this other woman while I'm dating this woman. It's like, if we live in a society where polyamory was more accepted as a thing, then you would be able to do that, and you wouldn't have to cheat on your partner. But of course, that's a whole different tangent. It could be, I would make that into an episode, but I don't think that's really in my purview. And even then, I probably wouldn't include it in like a Pride Month. Maybe I would. I don't know. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. But back to bisexual women. The reason why is because they are just constantly fetishized. There are a lot of things about like sexual and gender identity that are just fetishized, and that's a sad thing. Like if not all things have been fetishized to an extent. Black women have been fetishized. Latina women have been fetishized. Asian women have been fetishized. Femboys have been fetishized. Trans people have been fetishized. And, of course, bisexual women have been fetishized. But like always, they're also demonized for some reason because they want to have a power dynamic. Which perpetuates this. It's like a perpetual cycle because, like, they do this. They get, like, it's always the same. It's like stereotypes. A stereotype is made up, and then it's perpetuated, and then people fulfill that stereotype. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, usually perpetuated by stuff like the media. An example that I know very well is the situation revolving around Barbara Keene in the Fox series Gotham, a Batman show that takes place during Bruce's adolescence that is basically like Gotham before Batman shows up. I personally really like the show, and I would recommend any of you guys watching it if you want to, but I'll just be upfront and say one thing. The show is vastly different from the first season and the last season. Very much. And it's a very long story about like executive meddling and like issues behind the scenes. But again, I find the show very fascinating. It was very much loved, but it was also very heavily criticized. And one of the largest criticisms that they received was due to its LGBTQ plus representation, where it pandered really, really, really hard to its like LGBTQ audience, because it kind of got like a big audience on Tumblr. Very much expected that it would have a large LGBTQ crowd, and they did a lot of pandering to them, but they always pulled back at the very last second. Revolving around 3 characters, but I'm not going to reveal who 2 of them are, just in case you want to check out the show for yourself. But I will say, if you get the vibes, don't get your hopes up for those 2. The one I will discuss is Barbara Keene. Very early on in the show, she is revealed to be bisexual. Wow, great. W for LGBTQ representation? Well, there's a bit of a problem with her representation, which is very common for media to do, where they pick two relationships. Like, they do this thing where if they have a bisexual character, they'll have two relationships, usually. One with a character of the opposite sex, one with a character of the same sex. And what ends up happening is that the one with the same sex relationship conveniently is toxic or just a bad relationship. Maybe one of them ends up cheating on each other, and it's just not a good relationship. But the one with the heterosexual, relationship, that one is amazing. We love that one. That one is like nice, wholesome, and like literally, it's literally just like, oh, on one side it's like hedonistic sex cult, and on the other side it's like Puritan Christian values. Heavily exemplified by the fact that in the beginning of the show, she is in a relationship with Jim Gordon, then she breaks up with him. And then after she breaks up with him, she literally becomes insane. Literally becomes flat out insane. And it was heavily implied that she used to be insane when she was in a relationship with a woman. But when she got with the man, she settled down. She became normal. She straightened out. And she gets into a couple of relationships with a couple of female characters. But the relationships are really just meant for teenage boys to be like, oh, fuck yes. It's basically just made to be softcore porn for, not even softcore porn. Like, literally, it's just like blanket on top of them, implied nudity, they make out. That's essentially what it is. Another one being with a character named Tabitha. Like, Tabitha also has a similar thing where it's like she has the relationship with Barbara Keene, and that's incredibly toxic. But she also has a male character that she has a thing for, and it's like, oh, it's wholesome. It's wholesome chungus. They like kiss and they're like, oh, you're so sweet. You have beautiful eyes. Blah blah blah, like that. Meanwhile, her relationship with Barbara Keene is literally just like scissor. Like that's basically what it is. That's basically all the relationship is. But what's worse is that her relationship with Tabitha isn't even a relationship. Even though they literally kiss, have sex, very heavily in a relationship, at the end of the show, like, they literally just like, and shout out to our two best friends, Tabitha and Barbara. It's like, really? Really? You did this? You did the thing? We'll get back to the best friends trope in a minute. But another way bi people are erased in the media is to do another very simple line. And this line isn't as bad as like previous ones, like it's just a phase. But this one I still find a little bit of an issue with. And it is, I don't do labels, where bi or pan characters in the media just don't explicitly identify themselves as bi or pan. Like, there's a slight implication, like, maybe it's, like, implied that they got into a relationship with a same-sex character, maybe they kiss a same-sex character, maybe there's, like, a moment where it's, like, yeah, it's complicated, with maybe, like, a slight implication that it's an experiment. It's not necessarily that bad, because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of IRL people that are struggling with their bisexuality, and use that sort of as a way to deflect, but, like, the problem is, the reason why they don't do that is because there isn't that much good representation of bisexual people in the media. Maybe if they did have that, they would be less likely to just go, oh, I don't really do labels, and just go like, yes, I'm identified as like a proud bisexual person. It's like, yeah, why not? But to transition away from the media, let's talk about the infamous best friends trope, where bisexual people in history get head-washed into being straight, despite prominent evidence existing that shows otherwise. Many historical figures will have the very obvious fact that they are bi be washed away in order to fit some historical narrative that they like. I might go in depth on this topic in the next episode, but there are two examples that I can think of. One being Mr. Rogers, who, in one of his biographies, is explicitly quoted as saying, I must be right smack dab in the middle because I have found women attractive and I have found men attractive. That is literally Fred Rogers explicitly stating that he has found men and women attractive. That doesn't seem like something that you would just, like, a straight person just does. Like, because I've heard some people say, like, oh yeah, well, straight people, like, they yeah, it's fine. They'll identify guys like attractive or whatever. It's like, that's fine. It's like, I don't think that's normal, guys. I don't think it's supposed to be normal. And they'll be like, yeah, this guy, I mean, he's got like tight abs, like got big bulging muscles. It's like really attractive and like, kissable lips, all that stuff. It's like, I don't think it's supposed to be normal. I don't think straight guys like think that about other men. But one that is more in line with the trope is the situation regarding Emiliano Zapata. Zapata has a little bit of a history with a little-known figure known as Ignacio de la Torre y Mir, i.e. the gay son-in-law of Porfirio Diaz. In fact, Ignacio was literally used as leverage against Zapata when he was transported where the liberal generals were going to be, specifically so that Zapata wouldn't be attacked. Like, quite literally, like, again, it almost seems like clear cut, but a lot of Mexicans don't want to hear this narrative, to the point where there was literally a gay artist in Mexico who made an art piece explicitly calling attention to this by sort of like, because one of the big things is like they have this like machismo like attitude with Zapata, like, oh, he's this nice, cool, amazing guy, like he like shoots guns, kisses women, all that stuff, even though him being bi doesn't really have anything to, like, it doesn't take away from that at all. But there was a guy, he made an art piece that showed Emiliano Zapata being very feminine and riding like a pink unicorn, and a lot of people got really offended by that because it was a antithesis of the vision of Zapata they had in their mind. It's just a similar thing I've said previously in other things, where reactionaries sort of like have this viewpoint of like this fake history, and that's the same thing with them. They want to believe that Zapata is like this straight like guy. Like, I mean, another example is like on our campaigns, a lot of people are listed on our campaigns, like politicians and figures are listed as straight, even though there's no evidence to say that they are straight. I mean, sure, they got married to a woman, doesn't mean they're straight. And as much as I'd love to keep shitting on the straights, unfortunately, they're not the only ones who have some issues regarding bi people. Unfortunately, the gays seem to have issues with them as well. Well, some of the issues they have kind of overlap with hets, it's just a phase thing. Let's focus on some issues that are unique to the LGBTQ community. A lot of it stemming from one core belief, that bisexuals aren't truly part of the LGBTQ community because they can adapt to a heteronormative world. Even going so far as to claim that either bisexuals are just gay people who disguise themselves to avoid homophobia, or we're not ready to come out yet, i.e. relitigating the pick a side argument, or straight people are disguising themselves as gay to infiltrate gay spaces. Like, they just think, oh yeah, I like guys too, and then it's just like, oh, they'll just hit on like the bi women, the gay people crowd, whatever. It's not how it works. We all know how that's not how it works. Or I guess we all don't know how that works, because they got some people who are really like homophobic in like some comments. So it's like, I guess we all don't know how it works. I mean, unless my crackpot theory is true, in which case we do know how it works. I mean, they understand this sort of mentality when it comes to heterosexual people using stuff like that to attack them. Like, you know, some people claim like, oh, we can't trust transgender people because there's the trans trenders or whatever. But will then immediately turn around and then use those same arguments against people in their own movement. That's the problem. It's just like a lot of movements in general, they don't have solidarity. A lot of them really just like to start like fighting with each other for no reason. A similar thing can be said of the trans community, because it's like, oh, sometimes it's like, oh, you have to be MTF or FTM. You can't be non-binary. Or the division of you need to experience gender dysphoria at one point in your life, or you can't have it. And then there's another one where it's like, oh, you need to cut the cock off, dude. If you don't, you ain't a real woman. All this manifesting is making the bisexual people feel like they don't belong in the LGBTQ community. Not helped by the fact that there was a very recent movement in 2018 where literally it was a prominent hashtag that I checked and is still being used, called Drop the B, literally saying that the time has come for bisexual people to literally be excluded from the LGBTQ community. The reasons why, we'll get to in a bit, both the one that they believe and the one that is the real reason, but I just want to explain very obviously, objectively, why dropping the B is an objectively terrible idea. Like, quite literally, on the most basic level, it just doesn't make any sense to do that. The most recent study that I have seen as of the time of writing this was conducted in January of 2024, which broke down people's sexualities based on generation. Gen Z had the most interesting results, as 72% of people identified as heterosexual, while 28% identified as LGBTQ. However, if the 2018 hashtag was a success and we actually dropped the B, the LGBTQ community would be 13% of the population. Bisexual people are the remaining 15%. Literally 15%. That's literally the exact same number as all the rest of the LGBTQ community combined. They are quite literally the overwhelming majority of the LGBTQ community. And yet, for some reason, they're considered outsiders. What functional purpose would removing a majority of the people in your community do? Quite literally, what is the purpose? I'll tell you what the actual purpose is. Like, they'll like to claim that the next reason is it, but here's the literal objective reason why they're doing this. It's because straight people don't want the LGBT community to be aligned. That's why they're also doing all this like stuff with trans people now, trying to get like all the gays against groomers, like all that bullshit, trying to get gay people to like turn against trans people. That's why they're doing it, because they understand that if the LGBT community is united and actually combats all the issues that they face together, they can't be stopped. But if they're divided and fighting amongst themselves, then that's good, because then they get to do whatever the fuck they want to the LGBT community. It's the same reason why, like, a lot of other issues, like, why the right is so ecstatic when they see people like, oh yeah, we're not going to endorse AOC because she's too much of a warmonger, like, you fucking idiots. That's what they want you to do. They want you to not vote for her. That way they can win. Quite literally, that is what they want. And they don't understand, like, this makes no sense to me, really, because it's just, like, they don't understand, like, because especially when they're, like, literally at the point where they're, like, hating each other. Because, like, yeah, we'll get some people, like, in the LGBT community who will literally just hate trans people. And we'll get people in the LGBTQ community that are like, oh, we hate bi people. Like, it's just, they literally think, like, oh, if we just stop these people, then we'll be accepted into society. It's like, no, you're next. That's what's going to happen. If trans people are excluded, then you're next. But I guess you do probably want to know what is the alleged reason that they wanted to drop the B. And in order to understand that, I'm going to have to go a little bit into an abridged history of the queer movement, to my understanding. Like, it's an abridged understanding of my understanding of a movement. Bear with me. Back in the long olden days, like way back in the earliest moments of the LGBTQ community, like I would say around the 50s, that's kind of when like the LGBTQ movement like started like kind of like coming out of the woodwork and coming out. But back then, we didn't really have an understanding of gender as we do now. We mostly relied on the idea antiquated of biological sex, and that it had some connection to a person's gender identity, and that it was set in stone. Like, you're born with a penis, then you are a man. You will be a man. Hence, this sort of very basic understanding of the human sexual orientation. You like the opposite sex, you're heterosexual. You like the same sex, you're homosexual. If you like both sexes, you're bisexual. But then, one group of people came and made things a little more complicated. Transgender people. While they've existed basically at the same time as the rest of the community, there was a little bit of a confusion to how to proceed with trans people. They were unsure, like particularly if you were attracted to one sex or one gender. You didn't really know what to do, which led to trans ostracization, putting them in a similar boat to bisexual people who were ostracized because they liked both sexes and not just one. And those two groups got close. Sometimes a little too close. because bisexual people really didn't have that much of an issue with trans people regardless of how you viewed them. Like whether or not they accepted their sexual and gender identity, or they literally just believed that they were a person in drag, it didn't matter. They didn't care what the equipment was downstairs. They just wanted a chance to use it. And yeah, but then another problem arose. Well, problem, quote unquote, like, because some trans people weren't necessarily interested in becoming the opposite sex. Whether it be that they didn't really feel like they wanted to transition that much, that they just wanted to like socially transition, or whether or not like just do hormone treatment, but not actually like go through like bottom surgery, or literally just maybe they just didn't want to be the opposite sex. Like they didn't feel comfortable with being a man or a woman, and they wanted to identify as something in between, something that doesn't involve the gender binary. Maybe they felt like they believed like they had aspects of everybody in them. And that's when we got the whole like cringe thing that anti-SJWs like really like hated so much, where it's like multiple genders, where we had like the many genders across the world. Then what the fuck's up with bisexuality then? Bisexuality allegedly hinges on the concept that there are only two sexes or genders. So what happens when more get added to the mix? Well, some people didn't feel the term bisexual was equipped to handle. So a lot of people in the bisexual community kind of like, there was a little bit of an issue because like sometimes it was like people in the bisexual community that were like, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that bisexual is the correct term. So they started gravitating towards other terms, one of the biggest ones being pansexuality, the sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction towards people of all genders. And then there would, of course, become tension between pansexuals and bisexuals. Does being bi mean that you're not accepting of NBs or gender fluid people? Are pans more accepting than bi people? Should pan be the new term instead of bi? Which just led to that aforementioned thing I said at the beginning of this segment, where I mentioned how bisexuality at the beginning used to be this definition. Now, the definition's a little bit more complicated. Some argue that the definition should remain as it is. Some argue that it should broadly mean attraction to more than one gender. Some argue that the bi in bisexual means that you are attracted to the same and different genders. But the biggest one being just the understanding that bisexuality is probably just considered the more umbrella term that encompasses every single like person who has expressed romantic or sexual attraction to at least two gender or sexes: pansexual, omnisexual, polysexual, heteroflexible, etc. And yet, despite this outlook, some people still hate bisexuals. And the problem is that it can even come from places that are supposed to be the alleged safe spaces for them. Nowhere was this more prevalent than in the fucking Steven Universe fandom. For those who haven't seen Steven Universe, or even heard of Steven Universe, it is a show that was made in 2014 by Rebecca Sugar. The show was immensely popular, and one of the biggest reasons why it became popular was due to LGBTQ representation. Steven Universe is quite literally one of the fucking gayest shows that I've ever seen in my life. And its fandom is quite equally flaming. And the Steven Universe fandom was very, very, very opening and accepting of a lot of people, particularly amongst the LGBTQ community. Every single pride flag was flown by the fandom at once. But of course, the bisexual flag was on the bottom of the pole. As is very common for these types of shows, shipping was very common, and many fan art was drawn of the characters in relationships, some of which are safe for work. Actually, I would say that this is one of the few shows that probably had a lot more safe for work drawings than NSFW drawings. Not to say that it was probably like a 60-40 split. And unfortunately, as is also common with these shows, sometimes the shipping can get a little intense. If you don't agree with the exact same pairing of these fictional characters that really haven't had any connection towards each other, then you're a bad person, and I don't respect you, apparently. One of the things that would get people absolutely furious would be if you shipped one of the feminine main characters with a male character despite them being heavily implied, then later confirmed, to have a relationship attraction to another feminine character. If you're from the fandom, I'm of course referring to the character of Pearl, who at the time had an implied crush on another female character, Rose Quartz, while also being shipped with some male characters that they thought that she had chemistry with. Mayor Dewey, or, what was the other fucking character's name? The mailman? To which many fans would go absolutely insane about after the airing of one particular episode, which further showed Pearl liking women. The fandom would write some very interesting messages. 4 examples coming to mind are as follows. Pearl is a lesbian if you headcanon or believe her as a bisexual, asexual, pansexual, or any other queer sexuality. You are lesbophobic. You already have Rose Quartz. She's bisexual. Why can't you be happy with her? Saying you believe Pearl to be bi as well is offensive and greedy. Any pairing of Pearl with a woman is leagues better than any pairings with her and a man. But the biggest fucking one is Pearl can have a relationship with a man. That would make her straight and take queer representation away. So a character who likes women and men apparently would take queer representation away? I don't think that's how it works. I should remind you, again, this is the same show that teaches people to respect and love everyone regardless of anything. With many characters on the sexual and gender spectrum, we've had characters who are bi, straight, gay, ace. Like, basically all the fucking main characters are technically non-binary. Intersex representation. Like, quite literally, there was no reason to even have all this vitriol. And what's worse, here's the fucking, like, worst part about all of this story. Now, you might say, like, yeah, it's kind of, like, cringe and sad stuff, like, whatever, but, like, this is what's even more fucked up about this. Literally 3 months before this episode came out, 3 months before the messages that said, oh, if she's bisexual, that's bad. Being, like, she can't be in a relationship with a man. That'll take away queer representation, blah, 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 all that stuff. Literally 3 months before that happened, Rebecca Sugar came out as bisexual. The creator of the show they like so much came out as bisexual. And in an interview that was conducted way more recently, she revealed that the only fucking reason that they didn't come out prior to that, like, they didn't come out earlier in their career, was because they were afraid of disappointing their fans if they knew the truth. These fuckers were literally taking in the show and at the same time diminishing Rebecca's own fucking sexuality. How the fuck can you even do that? The same goes to all the fucking reactionaries that watch literally anything in the media. Gay and trans people make literally every single piece of media. And you're gonna be there and be like, yeah. It's even more funny. It's like, take the red pill. Yeah, it's a fucking trans allegory, you idiot. What's even funnier is that Rebecca Sugar is also non-binary. So even the alleged reason, like, oh, you see, the reason why we don't believe in, like, this bisexual stuff is because, like, it's diminishing non-binary people. No, no. She is a non-binary bisexual person. These terms are meaningless. These terms mean whatever the fuck we want them to mean. You can identify as straight, gay, pan, bi, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And before we close out this episode, I just wanted to do something funny. And time to do the EPU crackpot theory of the week. I don't know if I'm going to be doing ones for each of these fucking, like Pride Month episodes, but, like, this is a good theory. This is one I thought of, and there's another one that I thought of that also is involved in one of the Pride Month episodes. But, like, yeah, the EPU crackpot theory of the week is everybody is a little bit bisexual, and/or bisexuality is the default setting as opposed to heterosexuality. Pause for dramatic effect. Pause for dramatic effect. Yep. I kind of do legitimately believe that to an extent. They're also kind of seen as sort of like the quote-unquote biological reason why homosexuality and like LGBTQ stuff is still around to this day. Like, cringe L ratio Richard Dawkins proposed the fucking the fucking gay, like he proposed two fucking like weird biological theories about like how bisexual people kind of basically procreated to make gay people still a thing. The sneaky fucker theory is what he called it. Where back in the day, during the hunter-gatherer days, they would like put the gay men to like be in charge of like the town while the straight men went to go hunting. But in actuality, it was a bisexual guy, so he like fucked the cave women, and that's why they're still around. I know Dawkins is not really the person that you should look towards for LGBTQ like anything, but like the dude, I did watch that video when I was younger, and I did go, oh. Now, why do I believe in the fact that either bisexuality is just default or everybody has a hint of bisexuality? Like, I think logistically, here are the reasons why. Logistically, more options. Like, let's be real. You got more options if you're open to the idea of getting into a tango with someone of the same sex. Some pieces of evidence for me are kind of like the sex, like, you ever seen those success stories of like conversion camps? Like South Park made a joke about that where it's like, and now we have our like this guy, he's one of our conversion camp success stories. Let's look at him. And then he walks out, he's like, yoo-hoo, it's me. And then it's like, he's like a very obviously effeminate gay man. And it's like, there are a lot of guys who like also like, I've seen like a lot of like videos and stuff like guys who like, oh, I went to conversion therapy and it worked really well on me and I'm cured and I don't fuck men anymore. And it's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure they're just bi. Like, I mean, I don't think literally it's a gay person who became straight because that doesn't happen. It's just a bi person who just settles down for a woman. Okay. Another one is the huge attraction to femboys. Like, quite literally, it's not even just like this is weird again. Why don't trans people get more like fame and like love? Because getting attracted to femboys is like apparently super fucking popular online. Like, I've literally seen a ton of people like, oh yeah, femboys, fuck yeah, to the point where they like try to convince this is another weird thing about like reactionary people. It's like this reactionary mindset to an extent, because like they really are just like, no, you see, in actuality, they're like doing all this 4D chess to be like, oh no, you see, actuality, you see, they're a boy, but like, it's not gay, it's not gay, just because they're a boy, that I'm like feminizing them, and it's actually like more straight, or if I do that, it's like, dude, just say you're gay or bi and be done with it. Like, I mean, I believe them to a very small extent if they didn't also just like mention like femboy cock like a lot. They get obsessed with the cock. It's like, dude, you're not beating the allegations at all. In that same vein, I've seen like a lot of people on like anonymous like boards that literally go like, they identify as straight, like in public they'll always be like, yeah, I'm straight, I'm 100% straight, whatever. And then they just secretly crave gay sex. Like, they just crave it. It might be like they're in the closet thing, but it's just like, you're not at all. Like, literally, like they'll say this in places that are just not homophobic. Like, they'll be on a gay forum. They'll be like a gay forum for men to meet other men, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm straight, but I can't stop thinking about male butt or like a cock. It's like, then you're not straight. You're not straight. Like, stop pretending you are. You're not. Another thing that's funny, Dennis Prager literally said that he believes that bisexuality is the norm. But why do I really believe that? Like, why? Like, why do I think, I truly think the reason why is because, I've said all this stuff, but like, why do I think that everybody has to have a hint of bisexuality in them? Or that bisexuality is more like common, or whatever. Like, I mean, we've seen the numbers that it is more common than like other LGBTQ groups. And I assume that maybe, like, because I've seen, like, a lot of things online that do make me question a lot of things, because, like, a lot of, like, supposedly straight guys will casually mention that the other guys are physically attractive. And then they'll ask around and be like, yeah, it's just, like, that's a common, right? It's like, no, it's not common. This isn't common. it's like the Kinsey scale. They're just a little bit like, because bisexuality on the Kinsey scale is literally just like if I remember correctly, the Kinsey scale is like 0, no sexual attraction, 1, completely heterosexual, 5 is completely homosexual. So that would leave 2, 3, and 4 as bisexual. They just lean a lot more in one direction than the other. But there needs to be a little bit of you that has a hint of the other side. Just in case. Just in case you really do need to you might not be able to reproduce, but you do, you're a human being. You do have urges. Everybody has urges. I've read an ace comic by an asexual person that literally explains that they also have urges. They have urges, but they just don't necessarily want them. But basically, there needs to be a tiny bit of the other side in you in case of a hypothetical scenario where you are not given the opportunity for person of your preference. I'm gonna give this to the guys, because the guys I think are more susceptible to this than the girls are. You are you were crash landed on an island. You're you were in a plane crash. Everyone on the plane died except for you and one other passenger. The passenger's around like a guy. The passenger's a guy, but they don't look anything like a guy. They got long hair, got a smooth body, they're thick in all the right places, and they are just openly willing. They're super willing. At one point, you're gonna go to him and you're gonna say, "Hey, buddy, pal, my main man, pal, bro. Listen, can I, I think that's gonna happen. Might not happen in the first week, might not happen in the second week, but depending on how long you're on that island, something's gonna happen." Anyways, that's pretty much all I gotta say on that topic. Don't erase bisexuality. Bisexuality is completely valid and 100% deserves your respect. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video when it comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to our website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.